her inspiration for the wine makers and wine growers that she writes about, and how Celeste and Clay's Gantz Family Vineyards inspired it all. So I think we said we'd give a couple minutes to see who signed on. Right now, we probably just have, my mom, if she figured out how to follow the link. So fingers crossed. So how are you all doing? Do we want to start talking about what we're all drinking tonight? Because I know that you all had poured yourself some wine to get ready for the event.
Yeah, that's a good one. So my stepfather Clay, we grow grapes and then we sell all of our grapes to winemakers. Clay makes wine as well for friends and family, and that's going to be changing a little bit in the future, but I don't know if we're talking about that. Anyway, Clay makes wine for friends and family, and we have our own label that we distribute. And so one of the earliest iterations of our wine was this one, Sweet Puppy. Is this the first one you guys labeled?
It is.
Yeah, Sweet Puppy, which is it is or is not?
I think so. It is.
Yeah. And it's the last one I have left in our cellar, which is a wine rack on the kitchen counter. But it's the last Gantz Family Vineyard I have. And so I pulled it out for tonight, and it's delicious. Thank you very much, Clay. I love it.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, that's right.
So we're drinking Gantz Family Vineyards Chardonnay. It's actually from Angelina's block, which is here on the property. We sell our Pinot Noir grapes, but our Chardonnay is, again, friends and family. We make it ourselves. Our list of friends and family has actually grown all of a sudden a lot. So Clay makes that.
We call it Angelina's block because Angelina talked Celeste into letting me plant a small amount of Chardonnay in the space that used to be taken up by family tents when we would have campouts, and so we named it after her.
After her.
It wasn't just Chardonnay. We planted some Pinot too, but my mom was like, "But where's everyone gonna sleep?" And I'm like, "In a hotel."
Everyone, like one reunion that we had.
Yeah, one year for 4 days, and we have to keep this property because the whole property is 6.5 acres. Is that right?
Yep.
Right.
And then we planted originally on 4. My numbers are gone. 4 acres, 4.5 acres.
Yeah, 4 acres.
And so there was just this area that was tent specific. I was like, it makes sense to put some more grapes down, and we did.
So thank you for that, Angelina.
I wasn't vying for a block named after me, but really I was.
I think it's a worthy trade. Hence, I would definitely go with Chardonnay.
And it's delicious, so.
It is. Clay makes wonderful Chardonnay.
Wonderful Chardonnay. Yeah.
Well, hopefully we can get some people on this call added to that friends and family list, because I am running low on Chardonnay in the quarantine.
But come to California.
But there's just not as much tent space, Gabrielle. So you're gonna have to figure something else out. I'm so sorry.
I can't go. Where will I sleep? Okay. Well, I think hopefully we've got some people signed on and we can get started. I would love to dive in a little bit. So for those of you who might not have read the books yet, first of all, you definitely should. But this is the second in 2 books that Angelina has written. And there is a third coming up, thank God. The first was Lush Money, about a powerful billionaire and her prince husband. And then this one is about the billionaire's sister. Roxanne was the powerful billionaire, Sophia, and her kind of rekindled hate to love relationship with a old boyfriend who is now a successful rock star. So Angelina, as far as I have heard from all the events that I've seen you in, this is not your first book that is sitting under your bed. You've been writing for many, many years.
Yeah.
but this is your debut series that you've been able to share with us, and we're so lucky that you are sharing.
Thank you.
And a lot of this was inspired by your experience with your mother and your stepfather's vineyard, Gantz Family Vineyards. So I would love to start with that, of kind of how you all, Celeste and Clay, got involved in the vineyard business, because it's, I think, relatively new. And then Angelina, how you were inspired to write these books because of that.
Yeah. So why don't you tell a little bit, Clay and Mom, a little bit about deciding to buy a vineyard?
Yeah. So, I mean, as Angelina said, I've been making wine for a while. Every winemaker who goes out and buys grapes from someone else who grew them wishes they could grow their own, because then you have control of the whole process from start to finish. And so we started out with the notion that we'd find a property someplace where I could plant, 10 plants and grow grapes. And by happenstance, we found this beautiful place in the Russian River Valley, which was the first place that we looked at, honestly. And we bought it in 2009. There was no vineyard planted, and we spent the next few years developing a vineyard, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Well,
go ahead, Mom.
We did a lot of the work ourselves in developing it, because it was just a family farm. So there was a lot of fencing and just overgrown stuff. And so Clay and I came up every weekend from the Bay Area and just tore stuff out. And we did that for 3 years. We drove up for every weekend to kind of clear it before we planted. So,
yep.
At that time, I was 36 and didn't, I drank wine, but, my understanding of wine industry and all of it was purely, going to the grocery store and buying wine. And they told me they wanted to buy and develop a vineyard. And I was like, are you guys crazy? Like, that's crazy talk. Like, what are you doing? And they had this little kind of crappy farmhouse that was left on the property. And it had been an orchard. The man who had owned it was known as the Kiwi man at the local farmer's market. There was a bunch of kiwi plants on the property. And so there had not been a vineyard there already. And but they developed a vineyard, found out it was the perfect place to grow Russian River Valley Pinot Noir, which is one of the top Pinot Noirs in the country, one of the top places you can grow it and cultivate it and produce it. And but they asked me, they wanted to develop a website and social media presence. My background in journalism, I was doing some online marketing, and they asked me to help them develop a social media presence to kind of get into the Russian River Valley wine growers community. And so to be able to do that for them, I had to learn, in my late 30s, all about it, wine industry I didn't know anything about. And then I was coming to the property and getting to know the property. And none of us really have any background in agriculture either, like owning property. So for all of us, my mom and I mean, when I bring green plants into the house, my husband says they cry, because it's like they know it's the end days. And and Mom would always say she can't garden, she kills everything. And so none of
plants.
Used to. So this was all this idea of owning property and taking these plants, which very quickly become your babies, and growing them into this beautiful thing that then you give some. That was all very new. The entire industry and the language and the culture of wine was very new and instantly pretty fascinating. And what was also fascinating to me, both of them are really hard workers, but this whole thing about cultivating an entirely different thing that they'd ever done before, and watching their commitment to it and seeing how serious it was, and how dedicated they were, that it instantly went from like, this is a crazy, dumb idea, to this is amazing, and I get to be a part of it. So it was something I was able to embrace very quickly because of their enthusiasm. And Clay, believing in the property, believing in his willingness to learn, believing with the people he worked with, he very quickly contacted, and him knowing the wine industry in that area, he quickly contacted some of the top Pinot Noir makers in Russian River Valley and said, I'm going to have these grapes with this vineyard manager who's really well known, in this great soil that everybody wants. What do you think? You want to buy it? and got very quickly a purchase offer from one of the top Pinot Noir makers probably the top Pinot Noir maker at the time in Russian River Valley, Costa Brown. What, Mom?
The world.
In the world, yeah, exactly. So Costa Brown in 2009 was named #1 wine in the world. It's a Sonoma Coast. So they bought our grapes for 7 years. No, how many years?
No, 6 years.
Yes.
6 years. You bought in years, yeah. We're working with Dan Costa now, or they are working with Dan Costa now, but we are yeah. So that was the journey. It was mind blowing. It was like to be in your late 30s and suddenly be introduced to an entire different industry. For me, at least, it was really exciting in a way that I didn't know I could be in my late 30s, early 40s.
Right.
Yeah, and it definitely reflects on the page, you know, how much you've learned since then and how passionate you are kind of about that business, which I'm sure that you, I'd actually be interested to know. I wasn't planning on asking, but Celeste and Clay, how much do you help Angelina with the books and help her talk, you know, figure out what to say and talk about? Or Angelina, you're just an independent study after picking up the social media?
She sent me excerpts of portions of the book that related to the wine industry.
Yeah,
and
this one.
Which was a lot of fun. But she also, you know, we've gone to a variety. I went back to school at Davis, and they have a lot of ongoing programs. She's come with me to a couple of them, so she absorbs things like a sponge, and so her knowledge came fairly quickly, I think. But anyway, that was fun I would not say I did enough to merit a co-author credit, but.
But the thing is, Clay is always, wine has the reputation of being difficult to access. I mean, you can buy it, but difficult to understand. And I kind of relate it to, if you grew up in a country that didn't have a diverse music understanding, if you grew up in a country that didn't have blues and jazz and hip hop and, you know, all of these varieties of music, and then suddenly you went to a place where there was all of this cultural understanding of all these different varieties of music, you would be very overwhelmed by that. We as Americans, or at least, you know, my generation, the Gen X generation of Americans, we're not raised with wine. So we don't have the vocabulary with wine, we don't have the understanding. So it can be incredibly intimidating. The way Mom and Clay have always, Clay definitely was in kind of the Berkeley scene when wine was really taking off there, and these amazing cooks were in Berkeley, and was sitting at the wine bars with, like, you know, people working with Alice Waters and what's the chef that you walked into he invited you into his garage?
Oh gosh, I knew you were going to ask me.
I know. Anyway.
Paul Bertoli.
Yeah. Just some of them, just these amazing chefs. He was in that scene. So his vocabulary and his understanding is more than, you know, the average person. He never treats it as something that is, you know, inaccessible, or something that he has special knowledge of and that other people don't. You know, he's always made it very accessible for me to understand. And so our conversations about the vineyard or about winemaking, whatever, is always something that's just been very accessible for me. If either of them in any way had not made it accessible, then I wouldn't have enjoyed it. But that translation from how they've expressed it to me, how I've seen it in wine country, and wine country generally, the growers and the winemakers are also people who make it incredibly accessible. The people who make it hoity-toity are people who aren't in the industry for the most part. They're not people who are really close to the land or close to the process. And so that accessibility, this long answer, is what I try to present in my books. So I'm not going to send it to Clay and be like, you know, I want it to be factually accurate, but I also understand that most of the people reading my books don't care about the wine industry. The main thing I'm trying to show is competence porn, that, you know, this prince is not just a prince. There's something that's really important that he's trying to achieve. This princess is not just a princess. There's something really important. So all of that detail is just about showing that these people have something huge at stake and hugely at risk. They, you know, at the end of the day, all of that has to be part of the story poor people who don't give a crap about wine for the most part. So very long answer, but Clay was great at making all that accessible.
What you've done, Mihai, though, is the key thing is it's about passion. You know, your romance books are about passion. Growing and winemaking is about passion. If you're doing it to make money, you're gonna be in trouble. And if you're doing it to have all wine and cheese on the deck, it's not gonna work. People ask us, what do you do for a living? And we say we're farmers, and they're like, well, that's really cool. What do you grow? Wine grapes. Oh, no. It's still farming. It's dirty and it's long and it's hard and it's hot work, but we love it. And it really is about passion. And that's why it works so well in the romance genres.
Yeah. Mom's going to cry, and she's going to make me cry, and we're all going to cry. So
I know.
we're all going to cry and be okay with that.
Totally
There's a question from Sarah Kaiser who said, how long does it take to bring a property from nothing to a mature vineyard? Oh, there it goes. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for joining us. How long does it take to bring a property from nothing to a mature vineyard? Clint?
The fastest you could do it would be 3 years, and I think it took us 4 from start buying the property to realizing our first crop. 4 years, 5 years.
Well, it's 5 years to go from planting. Yeah, we're gonna do this the whole time. It's 5 years to go from planting to mature. Your first harvest is at 3 years.
It took us 2 years to get the vineyard ready to plant. Then we planted, and then it takes 3 years to bring the vines along to where they're mature enough to bear their first crop, and then they go on happily for 25 or more years after.
And then another year for us to start talking to each other again.
That was a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I would love to hear a little bit. One of my favorite kind of stories about this series of books is how being at Gantz Family Vineyards inspired you to make, to start in that first book, Lush Money, to have, winemakers even involved in the story.
Yeah. So we was Christmas 2015, and we were there for Christmas, and Christmas in Sonoma County is like 75 degrees, and it's gorgeous and it's fantastic. So sitting outside, and fortunately we couldn't do this video, or we couldn't do this chat while they were outside because their internet isn't strong, but it's just this gorgeous piece of property. It slopes up. So the farmhouse is on the top of the hill. These trees are nearly in front of our farmhouse, and then this whole property slopes down. And so that's a primary Pinot Noir vineyard. It goes wraps around to the left, and then a little block that Angelina's block is on the right. But so I was sitting outside and had seen a book that I thought was titled The Billionaires Prince. And I thought, oh, The Billionaires Prince, looking online at books. The Billionaires Prince, what would that be? That must be a male book. And I realized in an instant that I had assumed the billionaire of The Billionaires Prince had to be a man. And as a lifelong feminist, I was horrified at myself for assuming that. And so I quickly was like, I have to write a billionaire businesswoman. So I had been in a situation where I really was pantsing books, which means I'm writing them by the seat of my pants. And since I had this idea, in that moment, I thought, I need to write a synopsis. What's this book going to be about? And so just very quickly, I was like, okay, 3 days a month, they're going to have this contract. And there's an impoverished prince. Why is he impoverished? What's at stake for him? And I'm literally up, outside writing this on my phone, and I look up, and there's the view you just saw is like in front of me, and I was like, vineyards, like the whole his kingdom is based on vineyards. It's this ancient wine growing kingdom. They got their first charter from Queen Isabella, and they we're sending her royal wines, royal grapes, and it all went from there. And so literally it was just being inspired in that moment, but it was still about taking their passion, because of their passion and how at stake it is, and because there's only so much of that you can control, and as in most things in life, but farming even more so. You are so dependent on Mother Nature getting along with you. So here you have a prince you know, who we interpret that kind of royalty as having so much power and so much command. This guy's impoverished. He's hoping Mother Nature works along. Here's a guy with a lot of power and that we perceive, and yet having so little control. So I loved, and again, when you're talking about plants and you're talking about the earth and that, it creates something that's really lovely and organic when you're talking about people who have so much power. And so it all came together really, really organically. But it was so much fun to be like, duh, like, why wouldn't I use this? It's right there. And I am blessed to have had this window into it that a lot of people don't have. And again, it's just a particular window where I didn't feel that I thought I could make it accessible to people and not a big research dump, which happens a lot when we research our books. Tiff Marcello is here. She commented, I love Hate Crush and Major Confidence Porn. She is a phenomenal author. Everyone should look her up. But thanks for being here, Tiff.
You kind of mentioned there a little bit about not wanting to make it research heavy, and you know, we kind of touched on that when you're talking about whether or not Clay could get a co-author credit. I would love to hear kind of how you were able to strike that balance of making it so, you know, I could understand what was at stake for the characters as someone who knows nothing about wine except how to drink it, and then, but you could also, you know, be true and show, you know, that experience of wine growing and winemaking. How did you kind of toe that line?
Yeah, thank you. In the first book, it wasn't as much of a risk because he was developing this vine, or the risk of overdoing the research dump. But he was developing a vine, but it really was a lot more about the relationship. And so I was able to go, there was one scene where he is, what do they call when they put the vines, the rootstock in the cloning? Yeah, they clone. What's it called when they put it together? Grafting. See, I lose stuff if I'm not in it. So then he, in the first book, he's grafting a vine in a greenhouse. And that's probably the most detail I went into because it's a very physical thing. You actually cut the vine that you're going to grow the grapes from, you tape it together to the rootstock, and you stick it with the rootstock and you tape it together. So because it was tactile, it was easy to describe. In the second book, it was much harder to get that balance because I went into a lot about developing a winery and what the growing season looks like. And the main way that I manage that research dump is rereading it and figure out when I get bored. If I get bored, then the reader's going to get bored. So there was a lot cut. I did cut a lot. I did kind of take, you know, two paragraphs of like, this is what they're doing, and be like, and it went to one sentence, you know? So I think the big thing is really, really, and if I'm going to be talking about the actual process of winemaking, wine growing, that it has to be it has to mean something to the story that her, you know, and to the love story. I mean, in romance, you're taking it one more notch where it's got to be something about the romance and those two people coming together. But the main thing I do is manage. If I get bored, people are going to get bored. So every precious word of research is not going to be that important if it gets in the way of a love story, which is the most important thing. But for her, it was important for me to show this because I needed to show how capable Sophia was. You know, she has a lot of issues, and it was important for me for all of the issues with her love life for people to understand how qualified she was as a winemaker and as a leader of her community.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In doing all of that research, I would have loved to hear what I guess all of you guys find the most interesting about wine growing or winemaking, even if you weren't able to fit it in the book.
You each go first.
You want me to go?
You go.
I'm going to give you two answers. The thing that surprised me most about winemaking is that it's probably, I tell people, it's probably 80-90% janitorial work and 10% art, because cleanliness is so important. But it's, for me, winemaking is really a good way to show, you know, love for my family and that kind of stuff. It's like cooking a meal, really, that you're there and people enjoy it. Grape growing is totally different. Grape growing in the world that I'm in so much of the rest of what I do is done on deadline, on time pressure. We need it tomorrow. We want it now. Farming doesn't work that way. It's Mother Nature. It's ready when it's ready, and your job is basically to sit around and watch patiently and not get in the way. And I like that balance in my life. I think that's something I really like.
I think for me, I mean, he does the winemaking, and I do, the cleanup. And as far as that, I'm the assistant in that area. In the farming area, part of it is that you look at these plants and you all of our wine. I can think of,
Is she breaking up, Gabrielle?
Yeah, I think she's breaking up for me.
Hey, Mom.
Yep.
Uh-oh. You guys are breaking up.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, wait.
Okay, well, you go. You talk.
We missed it. We heard for me, and then it stopped. You look like you're going now.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah, just as that. It was a second.
Oh, okay.
It did it for a second. Yeah,
Maybe
okay. Just pretend it didn't happen, and then start with this for me, and then keep going.
Overwhelming the system with my charm,
That's right. That's right.
So the first time that I held a bottle of wine that was made from our Pinot grapes, I cried, and my friend was like, was it Michael or Dan? He handed it to me, and I'm just like, and he's like, oh my God, she's crying. I go, you know what? It's like having a baby, because it does take about 9 months from the moment you have bud break, when the first leaf comes out, and you go through the entire process, and you have the harvest, and then you wait for it to be made. And when you have it in your hand, it's like you put so much caring and effort. Oh God, so much caring and effort into that bottle. It's, it's not just something you drink. It's something you believe in. And you look at we're so small that we can look at every single plant. And when you see one that's stressed, you feel very personal about it. And this is not the be all end all of all as far as our livelihood, but you get very personal about it. And it's a very personal experience. It really is.
I do. I mean, I think that's what makes it so fascinating it is a science, it is an agriculture, and yet there's something very historical about it, and there's something very magical about it. You create this thing together with sweat, with chemistry, with, and with real care. I have never been connected to the ground before, and now there's a Gantz Family Vineyard. I am Gantz Family, and it's this property and it's each plant. And, whenever we go and visit, which isn't as much as we'd like, but it's like, we do a loop of the whole property. We walk between all of the vine rows, and it's really, really meaningful. So it is just this, chaos of so many really, really cool things. And then you get to hold the bottle and you get to drink from it, and something you created. I mean, at the end of the day, it's very much like a book, I guess, a wine bottle is.
Small that we do a lot of our own work. We do our gophers, we do our shoot positioning, we do our pruning. I mean, we're in there a lot. And so it's a lot of work. So it is like having a baby. It's all this work that you put into it. Oh.
Well, I think I really saw in Hate Crush, because Sophia was so invested in this vineyard and creating something from scratch and kind of proving herself through that. And that really shines on this page. And Angelina, I think that you're becoming known for writing very strong female characters. So I would love for you to speak a little bit about how all that went into the writing, and how you use this wine growing, and what seemed very important to Sophia, wine making as well. Not just selling her grapes to someone, but having her kingdom be a great wine making kingdom as well. And how you kind of made that part of the story, and why that was so important to you. And Sophia?
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of getting into wine culture. You start understanding what's really important to people within that culture, and a wine grape expressing itself without a lot of intervention and without a lot of like man-made hands getting in the way. And it's really, really important to winemakers that the idea that it's, you know, again, it's your land and it has a certain thing to say to it based on the rain that goes through it and the, you know, the sun that shines on it and the way the soil is composed, and that grape inherently has something to say. And that as a wine person, as a winemaker, right now what's very important is very little intervention in how that grape expresses itself in wine. And so it's that level of, it's integrity, right? Like I think as writers, a lot of times we talk about kind of what is our essential story. What's the story we're always trying to tell in whatever we're writing? What I discovered over 20 years of doing this, that is that the story I'm always trying to tell is one about people trying to find their integrity. They're trying to find, discover, and be their integral selves. And that's kind of the core of every story I have to tell, and how difficult that is. And a lot of times people aren't lying, you know, purposely lying about that. They're not purposely deluding themselves or others, but there is a level of delusion, and it is hard to be your true self. And so this idea of Sophia embracing the perfect, you know, these great grapes from her community, and yet the grapes not being expressed the way it should by people from her community, and that being her goal is again about that search for your integral self and being able to express that. It was what she was doing with the wine, it was what she was doing with the grapes, and what she's trying to find for herself. And she had, you know, she probably had a greater journey to do that than any other character I've written so far. And it's a rough one. And some people are like, that's too much angst for me, but I enjoyed it. And I think she was able to find that place for herself. But yeah, but the journey of what she's trying to do is what the journey with that wine grape she's trying to do as well. So hopefully that came across.
I think it did.
At the end of the day, I'm just like, I just want to write a lot of kissing scenes. Let's just kiss a lot.
Well, in that vein, I would love to go to a question that we just got from Lelia. One more page of a friend of One More Page. She is the one that helped us set up this event along with Amber.
Love you.
So Lelia asked, how does the way you approach a story change between writing characters who are immediately at odds, like in Lush Money, versus characters who have a history together, like we saw in Hate Crush?
It's when you are writing a story that couple already knows each other, I find it more difficult because they come into with baggage. They have all of this baggage, where if you have a couple that's never met before, there's good and bad sides of both. When you have a couple that already know each other, they're bringing in a certain assumption and baggage about each other, and you're messing with that and changing it around. When you have a couple that's never met before, they get to meet and learn and grow and change together. And I find that to be kind of an easier process. Sometimes though, it's not as satisfying. I do like when I'm bringing a couple together at M rather than bringing them together at A, because of all of that history they have together, because I want to tell a really, really deep, rich romance story. Sometimes I'm already being an M, you know, it allows me a lot to build on, where when they're starting with A, as they did in Lush Money, you know, they have to quickly learn to understand and empathize with each other, where it's easier to do that when they're starting later in the story. So I go back and forth. I find a lot of the stories I generally do are kind of second chance in one way or another. You know, maybe one person had the third story, Serving Sin, the third story in the book, in the series that I'm working on now, that is not really a second chance, but they already have history. They already know each other. And I find that ends up coming a lot naturally for me. I'm not the meet cute girl. That's not my bag whatsoever. I'm not interested in it. I don't think it happens very often. And I like, a lot of times there's a lot more meat to when two people are coming together.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I would also love, turning to Celeste and Clay, I would love to hear, in either of these two books that Angelina just discussed, what your favorite representation or part of the winemaking or the wine growing was.
I want to visit the cottage on the vineyard in Spain.
Yeah. I can send you a picture. That's actually that's like a real place, and it's gorgeous.
Awesome.
Yeah. I want to go there too. Especially with a hot prince.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
No. For you, that would be great.
Clay's the only person that I said, don't read it. And if you read it, don't tell me. He can read them. It's fine.
I keep forgetting that you, or trying not to think about the fact that you wrote it. So,
yeah, exactly.
I would say that for me, the thing that struck the most was the villagers. Yeah. When this whole series is over, I've already told Angelina, I said, I'm going to miss those people. I'm going to miss the Monty, because those people are so, again, it's that passion thing. They're so passionate about what they're doing. I mean, for them, it's their livelihood, but it's more than just making money. They really, really care. And to me, that came across so strongly in Hate Crush. It did in Lush Money, but in Hate Crush, it was really obvious about how much they love not only their country, but, their industry. And so that was the strongest.
I actually have a question for Angelina. I'm curious how did your junior year in Spain inform any of this?
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. The whole sensibility and this whole kind of, the reason that the Monte de Vineyard is this historic, ancient kingdom is all because I spent all my time in Santiago. I studied in Galicia and Santiago de Compostela for the second half of my junior year. Had I been in Madrid, this is not the book I would have written, but the area I was in was so steeped in history and so Gothic and, and so connected to old world Spain that was very easy to kind of, and the idea of like royalty and kingdoms and all of the weight of that history, it was much easier, or it was what I understood as Spain because of my time in Galicia. But the community and the village is because of you guys, and because, we've gone to all of these, sometimes we'll go to like nice wine, like, they're all nice, but like higher end wine events, but sometimes we'll go to the
Iron Horse?
No, the not Cupid's. What am I trying to say? Are
you talking about a winery?
When we went to the community event down the street.
Oh, with at Rod's.
Yeah. The one in the like the little community center, Mom.
Yeah.
The Druids.
The Druids. The Druids. Like that. Those are the things that like is the Monte. Like the real growers. Like, so the Russian River Valley was founded by all these Italians, and they were making like, wine before Prohibition, and then during Prohibition they were like making like stills and stuff. But it's like all of these multi-generational Italian families initially, and many of them are still around. And so you'll meet these people and they've just got these great stories, and these guys get together and they sit under a tree and they tell these old stories. And so that community and that history is something that I was able to actually, listen to and experience with them. We don't just go to like whatever, high-end wine events. We get to really be with the wine community. So that was really easy to get across because, I've been at those events. But yeah, there's these Druids down the street in this old, like,
they're just a bunch of people. So
totally they're not, but it's just, they call it the Druids, and it's just a little tiny like community center, and they get together and they bring food and drink wine, and oh my God, it's the best.
Tell stories aren't true.
Yeah, stories are totally true. Talk your ear off. You want to leave, they make you stay.
And just as a side note, because I know we're talking about the book, but as a side note, a lot of that has to do with Sonoma County. Sonoma County in Napa is beautiful. They make fabulous wine. In Sonoma County, our bumper stickers say, "My other car is a tractor." So come to Sonoma County.
Linda Becker is a dear friend of mine. I just want to get to her question because she's been so supportive. She's a friend of mine in Falls Church and has been so supportive of this whole journey. She said, do you see your joyful family connections infusing your writing to make it feel so authentic and compassionate as well as passionate? Yeah, without a doubt. Like, you can obviously see that we're not an understated bunch generally. And yeah, I mean, family is immensely important, and the people that get you and the people that will support you. And I think it's one of those things that it's so inherent to who I am as a person that I probably write it without even really, I don't think about it. Like, I'm like, this is just family. This is just what happens when people support you. And in fact, I read a short story one time, and the guy was like, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. And the woman was like, wait, you didn't tell me something because you were trying to protect me. And he's like, well, I'm trying to do the best for you. She's like, no, you want to help me. I want to be here for you. I have your back too. And I had a girlfriend tell me, I never thought of it that way. Like, I hadn't thought of a relationship being, we have each other's back, and it's understood. Like, you don't even have to say it. It's just understood. And so I think there's an element of writing family and connections in my books that I don't even process too much, but it's just understood. It's understood that the relationship of the siblings and then their spouses that are coming into the story, it's just understood that they all have each other's backs. It's just understood that they all love each other, because that's what I've been able to enjoy. So yeah, and passion. I mean, we do everything a little bit. We to 11. So
you can definitely see that kind of having each other's back, not just with the family members, but even with the growers that are signed on to be part of the vineyard. They really do have Sophia's back. But it's interesting to see kind of how she accepts that support. And though I just know I don't want to spoil anything, but I just know there's some really great moments where you really do see that kind of implicit support come through on the page.
Yeah, I think, and that's her journey. Part of her journey was understanding that and accepting it, and other people saying, it's not just you. You don't just have our backs. We have yours as well. And her being able to understand and accept that is a huge part of her journey. And yeah, I'm glad that you saw that, Gabrielle, because that was important for me.
Well, I would love to go to this other question from Carolina Kelly. So which one did you find easier to write, the second book in a series or the first one? Or did you have a different process?
So this is a great question. And I really, if there are any aspiring writers or, early writers in all of this, the first book, I literally thought about it on their property. I took 2 years to write it just because of life and stuff. But that book came out, what you read in the published is probably 90% close to the first draft. That book just came out and I loved it, and all of the puzzle pieces of it came together really innately, and it was awesome. And I pantsed that book. I just wrote it by the seat of my pants. I didn't plot it out. So I sit down to write book 2, and by this time I have an agent and I have a publisher and I have a contract. So the first book, book 2, is the first book I wrote in a contract. And I thought it could go just like book 1. I'm just going to write it and it's going to be awesome. And it's just going to come out. And I finished it and I was like, okay. And I sent it to my editor, and there was a big turnover in my publishing house. And so it took a while for her to get the notes back, and she got me the notes back, and she didn't say hot mess, but it was all but implied hot mess. And I knew it at this point. I think she'd had it for like 3 months. And at this point I knew, like, there were the puzzle pieces I had not put together. And so I printed out I had to get it back for a month. And I said, I can fix this. So I printed out the whole book and I sat it on my dining room table, and I just went chapter by chapter by chapter by chapter and put it together correctly and changed some of the angst and made them more empathetic earlier. But I had to I rejiggered the whole thing. I wrote like 50,000 new words in a month. And when I was done, I was like, okay, I might be deluding myself, but I think I've saved it. And what was really interesting was, because I allowed that book to percolate for 3 months, when I had to sit down and write pretty much a new chapter a day, a lot of times, I knew them. It was really effortless. I knew exactly what he would say, and I knew what she would say, and I knew why they would say it, which is not what I didn't know that much in the first draft. So, long answer to a short question. The first book was way easier to write, but the second book was probably more fulfilling, because I learned a lot about myself as a writer and what I could accomplish. The process was wildly different for the second book, and it's wildly different for the third book. And now I've fully accepted that I think my process is going to change with every book. Every book's been different too. The first book was two couples meeting together and kind of this contract of the whole thing. Second book was second chance romance with flashbacks. The third book is kind of a little bit romantic suspense adventure, and they're traveling to different countries. So every book, the process has to be different because there's different things involved in each one of them. So thank you very much for that question, Carolina. And yeah, but I think the note I have for new writers or aspiring writers is your second book is harder, and your first book under contract is the shit. It's the worst, and your editor will understand, and she or he will totally support you because they all know it. Everyone knows it. The sophomore book sucks. And every review that said there's no sophomore slump, I've just been really, really enjoying because I was afraid there was.
So how is the third one going? What do we have to look forward to in this series?
Yeah, so the third book, so first book is about Prince Mateo. Second book is about Princess Sophia. It's hard to point in the mirror. Their third book is about a half-brother they did not know they have until halfway through this book. His name is Roman Shepherd. He is an ex-Army Ranger, now the head of an elite security firm. And they find out that he didn't know either. He didn't know until he was adult that he's their half-brother. His mom was a stewardess that the king spent a weekend with. And so when he just came home from Iraq, he saved a Mexican heiress, teenage Mexican heiress. She was 17, almost 18. She'd been kidnapped, and he finds her and rescues her and saves her. When they need money in the first book, the brother goes to her dad, who is a Mexican industrialist, Daniel Trujillo, head of a huge automotive firm in Mexico, goes to him and asks for a loan, gets it. So this Trujillo Industries has been involved in the Monte the whole time. In book 3, that teen heiress is now the CEO of Trujillo Industries, and there's a new threat against her. And she asked Roman to come back and help protect her and her dad and her little brother. And he has been reluctant because this kind of secret the whole time is she was almost 18, he was 26, and he still had a really big crush on her, even in this very terrifying, traumatic situation, and kind of didn't feel like he should be around her. And so has kind of avoided her for the most part all these years, and now is going to go back and help protect her. And her secret is that she fell in love with him instantly and kind of, understands it was a teenage crush and is ready to get over it. So she feels like he's around and stuff happens, it'll help get over this long time unrealistic love she has for him. And then stuff happens.
I feel like Celeste put it best, where she looks very excited, and I agree wholeheartedly. I'm very much looking forward to reading that. I'm
excited.
I do.
Oh, sorry. Just really quickly, she did the first book, and I, knew at some point Roman was going to have a story. I knew the second book was going to be there, but I was thinking, it's kind of a midway book, kind of like Lord of the Rings, right? Just to get to Roman. Right? Mm-hmm. The second book is so good that the third book is like, yeah, it's this. Can't wait.
It looks like Carolina is also ready for the third book, so we're waiting on the edge of our seats. But I do want to introduce another member of the One More Page family, Margot. She's going to talk a little bit about how now in One More Page is able to sell wine on their website. So if you're inspired by our conversation, you can head over to One More Page's website and choose from the selection that they have available, which I'll let Margot talk a little bit about.
Cheers. Thank you. We have several wines tonight that we're offering, and they dovetail rather nicely, I think, with your books and with the Gantz Family wines. So They may not be the same grape, but they have commonality in that two of the wines are from the Klein family.
Mhm.
Klein family is actually the Jacuzzi family.
Right.
It's the Italian family that originated many things, including the jacuzzi. And so they really know how to live well, and they make wines, and they are really farmers at heart, and they look after the land very carefully. So we have their farmhouse white, which is made with 7 grapes. And it is a beautiful story because not only is it a nice wine, obviously it gets ratings, but it is a wine that's used to train young winemakers from around the world in green string farming. So Klein is very much a leader in green string farming, and they're beyond organic, and they look at all aspects. So the farmhouse on your property at Gantz, which I believe was there when you first came,
Mhm.
very nicely with this farmhouse white.
Wow.
And so the schoolhouse is actually where what they've named this farmhouse.
Mhm.
So it might be fun to explore that wine. It's got fresh lime and grapefruit flavors. It's great for the patio. And then the second wine we have from Klein is their Cashmere Red. And Cashmere Red was born as a wine that was created specifically for a charity event. And Nancy Klein created it. It was she and Fred Klein both. And they made it to be auctioned off at I think it was the Hospice de Rhone, because they're an integral part of the Rhone, what's called the Rhone Rangers, people who have supported Rhone varietals in the U.S., particularly in California. And so the wine was a huge success, and they described it as having this silken, beautiful quality like cashmere. And so they make several wines called Cashmere, but this is the one that they started with. And it's a GSM, Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvedre. And it really is like cashmere. It's juicy and silken and soft, and it's what I call a comfort wine.
Mhm.
So great with barbecue or romance things. So Klein is also, they're very passionate about what they do. They are green string, and they're very down to earth. So I think those two wines are very nice juxtapositions with the books and Gantz wines. We also have a third wine tonight. It's from Spain. It's Viña Bujanda, and I can't say it as well as you can, I don't think.
It sounds great.
And thank you. And it's from Rioja, and it is also from a family estate. They do farm practically organically. It's been in the same family since the late 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
And it dovetails with the book that is based in Spain.
Yeah.
Or both of them, I suppose. And so it might be a nice one to have while you're reading. And I'm happy to answer any questions on those wines that anyone has. I don't want to talk too much about the wine because I think we're really here about the books.
No, but this is phenomenal. I really wanted to use this opportunity to talk about One More Page books, but always have a phenomenal wine selection. And my understanding is it's just curbside delivery right now. There's not internet delivery, but really, really phenomenal selection. Great, and usually like really great price too. And that's what I enjoyed, because you could definitely get a book and a bottle and be like, okay, these go together really nicely. So the third one, the Spanish one. So I based Monte del Vineyard on the Rioja region, kind of this upper mountainousy area. And so, you know, a lot of times when I was looking for more specific research, I would just be looking at Rioja and looking at Rioja for pictures. So that's what I used. But no, I really did want to use this opportunity to talk about how great the wine selection is at One More Page Books, and the opportunity to, like, yeah, enjoy my two favorite things, romance and wine. And it should be a lot of people's other. And also, this event is the first to launch Bookstore Romance Month at One More Page Books. And so we're going to have a lot of romance events, a lot of amazing authors coming along in the next month. You guys have such an amazing romance selection. And just in terms of, like, you know, for a long time, Indian romance, we're not good friends. And now it is. And One More Page Books has been such an amazing champion of romance. And I just cannot thank you guys enough. So go get some of these wines and enjoy them during this next month of just these amazing authors coming along.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is you can go pick up the next events book, or the next, we have a romance book club at One More Page that we're now meeting remotely on Zoom. I'll be there as well. So there are plenty of opportunities to go pick up a romance novel and a bottle of wine at One More Page, and set yourself up for August.
Well,
Gabrielle, go ahead, Mom.
I was going to say those 3 bottles. The first one, this is for a hot summer day. It sounds beautiful, nice and crisp and stuff. The second one, they're always talking about mouthfeel. All I could think of when I saw that cashmere was mouth. Mouthful. I could almost taste it. And the last one is Spain. So I personally think people have to get all 3. You know?
Yeah, right.
Definitely.
Gabrielle, when is the book club meeting?
The book club meeting is the first Thursday of every month at 7. And I have now, of course, blanked on what this month's book is, but I'm sure Lelia will drop it in the chat.
Yeah,
I'm sure Lelia will. And yeah, so I hope to see you all there and at the other Romance Book Club events. But I would love to say thank you to Angelina and Celeste and Clay for being here, and Margot for telling us about those wines. Do you have any last thoughts or anything that you'd like to share with the group?
If you guys are interested in learning more about Gantz Family Vineyards, you can find them at obviously, I don't know why I said that. I said it because I'm 46 and old. GantzFamilyVineyards.com. It's been a while since we blogged, but it really is. If you want to see what it looks like and what the inspiration was, we've got some phenomenal photos and just a lot about the development of the vineyard. Really, really proud of that site, because it's just about the story of these 2 people doing a super cool thing. If you want to learn more about me, it's AngelinaMLopez.com, or you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at AngelinaMLo. And look great. Look at One More Page. They're doing all 4 pages
on it. And Lelia, as always, did come through, and the August book club pick is intercepted by Alexa Martin.
Great, intercepted. Alexa Martin is awesome. So yeah, definitely read that book. I think that's all. Thank you for everyone who joined us. I really love the opportunity to get my parents on here. They've been such an amazing inspiration and support during all of this. So it's just been this is so fun. I'm so glad.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us.
One More Page Books, and we're so proud of our girl. She's just phenomenal. We've always thought so, but now she's with this phenomenal group of women. It's wonderful industry. So, let's support it.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you so much, guys. You have an excellent Thursday evening, and enjoy the rest of your glasses of wine.
Sure.
Gabrielle, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
So much fun. Thank you for your enthusiasm. It's been great.
Thank you. Can't wait for the third one. Celeste and I'll have to chat about it.
I'm looking forward to reading them.
Oh, good. Excellent. Thank you, Margot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, sweetheart.
Bye, everyone.